Yeah, peeps, here we go. We are going to, in this video, solve quadratic equations using graphs. In an earlier video, I went over what to look for and why we're looking for it there to solve these equations. So if you haven't watched the first video on solving quadratic equations by graphing, check it out. A reminder, we don't typically use graphs to solve quadratic equations to get an accurate read because where we cross the x-axis might not be at a nice value. With that said, let's do this. So we're going to solve the equation negative 2x squared plus 32 equals 0 using this graph. So this is the graph of, and I'm going to change colors here, y equals negative 2x squared plus 32. So that's what that graph is. So we're looking to see, where does this graph right here equal 0? Where does it cross the x-axis? Well, that happens here and here. That's where the y value, that parabola, is 0. So that x value is negative 4 and this x value is positive 4. So our solution would be plus or minus 4. There's two solutions here. To check your work, you would plug your numbers into here. So that's my solution. If I plug 4 or negative 4 into something squared, I'll just plug both of them in there. Why not? Conceptually, you can't really do that, but we're going to talk about it and it'll make sense. Whether I square a positive 4 or a negative, I get 16 out of it. So I get 2 times 16 plus 32, regardless of what number I plug in. And 16 times negative 2 is negative 32 plus 32 is 0. So that's the check. That's it. So you graph out the graph, you see where it crosses the x-axis, and you're golden. The negative here is, if you're solving a quadratic equation, by graphing it first and you don't have the graph, that's going to take a long time and your graph might not be accurate. Maybe you don't cross the x-axis perfectly. You have a squiggly hand like I do and you end up with an approximation like 3 when it should be closer to 4. So this is great for when you have the graph already or a graphing calculator or some kind of graphing generator online, but if you don't have that, it's not so accurate. So let's check this out. X squared plus 4x plus 4, we've graphed y equals x squared plus 4x plus 4 below. We're looking to see where that value is 0. Well, that occurs where we cross the x-axis or just barely touch it, and that's here at negative 2. So your solution is x equals negative 2. It's only one solution, and if we plug in negative 2 to check our answer, negative 2 squared plus 4 times negative 2, plus 4, let's see where we end up. Well, negative 2 squared is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. If I do 4 minus 8, that's negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Yep, that's our solution. There's only one of them. Again, a reminder, when we're doing these graphs, it's great visually to understand what's going on anyway, so that when we get into later understanding of how to solve quadratic equations, we have a visual idea of what it is that we're doing with numbers. Very important to have that visual numerical understanding when you do algebra. Okay, so x squared minus 5x plus 2 equals 0. Here's the graph of y equals x squared minus 5x plus 2. We want to know where it is 0. Well, it crosses the x-axis here and here. And this is the shortfall of, or the shortcoming of, solving by graphing. I don't exactly know what that value is, but keep in mind these blocks go up by 1 every 2 that we go by. So each block is worth a half. So be very careful here. So this value is just shy of 0.5. So we'll say that x is approximately 0.4. And the other value that I could take on, well, this is 5 right here. So it's approximately 4.5. But those aren't the exact values. So we don't know exactly what our values are. In fact, if you plug in 0.4 into this, you'll get roughly 0. Because 0.4 squared is 0.16, minus 5 times 0.4 is minus 2 plus 2, doesn't quite equal 0. This equals 0, and then you're at 0.16, so it's roughly 0. So we know that's not the exact answer. So these are the approximates, and again, that's the shortcoming of graphing. Now, we've got the final problem. We're solving x squared minus x plus 4. I've got the graph of x squared minus x plus 4 ready to roll. So we want to know, where does this graph cross the x-axis? Well, here's the x-axis down here. It never crosses it, which means there is no solution. And I should really say, technically, you don't know this yet, but there's these things called imaginary numbers. Ignore it for now if you haven't learned them. So there's no real solution to this. We'll just say there's no solution for now. We don't cross the x-axis. And that's a positive of a graph. You could look at it real quickly and say, well, I don't cross the x-axis. There's no x-intercept, therefore there's no solution to this equation. Bottom line, when you're solving equations by graphing, talking about parabolas, quadratic equations, you're looking to see where does that equation equal to 0? So where does it cross the x-axis? Awesome stuff, y'all. See you in the next video. In later videos, we're going to see how to solve these things without graphing. Oh, can't wait.